generous introduction. It did, however, leave me I appreciate it. Kevin said as is appropriate that he was introducing me without further ado. And I will tell you, as my career, when I started thinking about my retirement, once before I retire, I am hoping to be introduced with further ado. I very much want to know what further ado looks like. I think it involves a guy juggling on a unicycle, playing a saxophone. I'm not sure what happens. I'm very appreciative of this turnout and this interest. We are in a period in American history, and particularly of our economy, which is going to be written about the history books. I think it is comparable to the New Deal. And prior to that, to the work done by Theodore Roosevelt and Woodrow Wilson. It's interesting, it has in common with the New Deal that there are also serious foreign policy crises going on, although fortunately not anything comparable to the threat the world faced, the civilization faced from Hitler and the Japanese aggression. I mentioned those two periods because I also want to say I'm very glad to appear in a partisan forum. It is important for us to work together and not to allow party differences to become an obstacle to cooperation. But I am troubled when I hear people talk always as if partisanship was a bad thing. Excessive partisanship is a bad thing. But there's never been in the history of the world, in my viewing of it, an example of self-governance by a large number of people where you didn't have political parties, because they provide a means of making the debate more rational. Now, people can get carried away. And frankly, part of the problem is that we had a Republican leader named Newt Gingrich who came to power in the late 80s, early 90s, determined to change partisanship. What I'm hoping that we do is not throw it out, but get it back to where it used to be. Some of you here will remember the proud statement by Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan that they were friends after 6 p.m. Actually, to be honest, in Reagan's case, it was like after 2:30. He was not a driven worker. But Newt Gingrich explicitly campaigned against the Republican leadership at the time, a man named Bob Michael, who was a Republican leader, a mainstream conservative in the Midwest, and said, no, that's not right. We're not friends. The Democrats are not honorable people with whom we disagree. They're traitors, they're corrupt, they're immoral. He made his point that way and introduced an element of anger into the partisanship. And when he got caught up in the kind of destructiveness that he launched, Tom DeLay replaced him. And Tom DeLay also believed in a very hard-edged partisanship in which you had a partisanship which was not, again, honest debates between people of good motives who differed about how to reach something, but they were bad people. Now, the idea that kind of partisanship should be done away with, but it shouldn't be replaced by a kind of amorphousness. That's not good for democracy. People say, well, everything should be bipartisan. Then why have an election? Why have elections in which one party replaces another or gets a majority? If you're going to carry out the public's will, then it seems to me you should have a respect for electoral results. Now, there will be times when there are no differences between the parties. There are very strong differences between the parties today, and in a number of areas, but most particularly in the economic area. You're going to see this, by the way, played out. You rarely get sort of scientific type experiments in the real world, particularly, say, in the political world. But in September of last year, George Bush's two top economic appointees, Federal Reserve Chairman Ben Bernanke and Secretary of Treasury Henry Paulson, asked the congressional leadership to meet with them on very little notice in Speaker Pelosi's office, and they said to us, if you do not vote us within 4 days the authority to spend $700 billion in ways that will get the credit system going, we will have a complete meltdown. we resisted him for a couple of weeks. I mean, we said we would do it. Frankly, part of the problem is this: given the role of confidence in the economy, when the Secretary of Treasury and the Chairman of the Federal Reserve come to you and say, if you do not do this, there will be a terrible crisis, then there's going to be a terrible crisis even if there wasn't going to be one. Now, I'm not accusing him of that. You know, there was a phrase, the self-fulfilling prophecy. But whatever the problems would have been, they are exacerbated if we say no to both of them. We did say we have to wait, we have to do some things.